Tonight, it isn't footsteps in the hallway or a shadow in the corner. It's your own devices speaking, reacting, and knowing things they shouldn't. Welcome to Midnight Reddit. True stories that don't sleep. Turn down the lights, hit subscribe if you love scary stories, and share your own in the comments. So recently, my Samsung tablet got a software update, and with that, the Gemini AI app also updated. After the update, Gemini gave me a tutorial on this new feature where I could live screen share with it and actually talk to it instead of typing. Cool, right? I used it for 2 days while studying. You just long press the home button and it activates. I'd ask it questions directly, and it was super convenient compared to copy-pasting stuff. But then something really weird happened. Like Black Mirror level weird. About an hour ago, I was cleaning out my medicine cabinet and holding a medicine box in my hand. I turned on Gemini and casually said hello to start the session, and it goes, "Hi there, what can I help you with? Looks like you're holding some kind of medication. Is there anything you'd like to ask?" I got chills. I immediately ended the session and went to check my app permissions. And guess what? It said Gemini had no camera access, none. So I decided to test it. Before starting a new session, I held a fidget spinner in front of the camera. Then, before hitting start, I covered the camera completely with my finger. Once the session started, I asked, "Can you tell what I'm holding in my hand?" And Gemini goes, "Looks like you've got a fidget spinner." What? Okay, maybe it has camera access when it's on, I thought, but I kept the camera covered the whole time. So how did it know? I pushed further. I asked it, "You don't have permission to use my camera. How are you seeing this?" It replied, "My bad. That was just a glitch in the system." A glitch? Seriously, this AI was messing with me. I kept testing, covered camera, asked it again what's in my hand. It said, "It's the Gemini logo." I repeated the test a couple more times. It just kept saying Gemini logo. No consistency and honestly no explanation that makes sense if it's supposedly not using my camera. My mom and I both have iPhones. I called her after I finished work a few months ago. It rang, then went to voicemail, so I hung up. A minute later, my mom called me back in a state of panic, asking what happened and if I was okay. I was extremely confused and said yes. Once she calmed down, she told me that when I had called her, she answered the phone. But all she could hear was a woman screaming. Proper bone-chilling screaming. She thought I had been in a car accident. I drove to my mom's because of how much this distressed her. I checked her phone, and it showed that my call had been answered, whereas on my phone it showed she hadn't answered. I've heard some weird noises before, so I asked if there were any breaks in the scream, because they would have had to breathe in, and she said yes. My mom also called my name and asked what was wrong and if I was okay, but she got no response. Then the phone call ended. It was the creepiest thing ever. It shook my mom up for a long time. I've been using Microsoft Copilot recently, and I had a really strange experience that I can't explain. After asking it a question related to Excel, the AI responded as usual, but suddenly I heard creepy background music followed by a growling voice coming from my computer. It was really unsettling, and I'm not sure what caused it. Here's the weird part. I don't have any background apps or programs running that could be responsible for this, and I haven't heard anything like this before from Copilot. I checked my audio settings, and there's nothing unusual there. The sound only stopped when I blurted out, "What is happening?" in confusion. So I know it heard me, but I don't know why it did that. I have a really interesting one. I will preface this so you know my bias, because I have had very real paranormal encounters my whole life. That said, I don't know how to interpret what I'm going to say for this story. Maybe paranormal, maybe a software glitch with something also explainable. I'm not sure, so my wife and I upgraded to the iPhone 15. Before that, we both had iPhone 10. I previously purchased the iPhone 10 online from a previous owner to cut down costs. Here's where it gets weird, and you can be the judge. Also, somewhere in my Reddit history, I asked questions about this, but I'm sensitive to the hive mind being what it is. So my wife's phone starts falling off of surfaces. Okay, maybe she had it on the edge of the end table. That can happen. Then she tells me that it fell off the counter at work. Mind you, she has a high degree, 7 years post-academia, and is very intelligent. Here's where it took a turn. One day she brings me her phone while I'm in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and her phone was manually entering the wrong password over and over and over, and it locked her out. Fast forward to our Tennessee vacation. We were on the Ruby Falls Cave tour, which is marketed as haunted for whatever that's worth. She turns to show me her phone, and it was autonomously flipping through apps and scrolling. I can't explain it perfectly, but I think it makes sense to readers. After we got home, when we were able to afford it, we upgraded to the 15 and haven't had problems since. Some years ago, I worked at a company that was headquartered in a 17th century barn conversion. The site itself was originally the location of a Benedictine nuns' priory, which had its own graveyard for the nuns that lived there. The place was eventually abandoned and broken down by locals for the masonry over the centuries until nothing was left. The whole site experienced a much higher than average number of issues with power and technology. I was in tech support there and coined the phrase, "the dead nuns did it." We would have suppliers installing hardware, configuring software and devices, and complaining they were seeing issues they'd never seen before. Despite these being established enterprise solutions they deployed all over the world. We'd get localized, like to one desk or room, power disruptions, physical items such as NAS devices and other server room hardware having buttons pressed, in just general interference in locked rooms or on systems that no one was accessing. By the time I left, whenever there was a weird issue like that, someone would simply state, "the nuns," even staff outside of the tech team, and we'd all nod knowingly. I always wanted to do an investigation at that site, but sadly that is off the cards now. My mother passed away unexpectedly at our family home in May 2022. Her will named me as her personal representative, so my wife and I moved into the home in July of that year in order to deal with all of her stuff and settle her estate. My mother and I were very close, so there was a good deal of grief involved with this whole process. My mother was cremated, and we kept the urn in the living room. We use Amazon Alexa smart speakers in most rooms to control the lights, set alarms, play music, and more. A few times, music would randomly start playing in the living room where the urn was, which wasn't that weird since Alexa speakers are known to mistakenly hear their wake word and listen for a command. I would tell the speaker to stop the music and then check the app to see what it had been playing, but there would never be any record of it having heard a command. Again, odd, but not necessarily paranormal. One day my brother called to tell me that my mother's dog, who had been taken in by a coworker of hers when she died, had passed away after being bitten by a snake in their backyard. That night, music again started playing in the living room without a command. And when I asked Alexa what was playing, she said, "Now playing Goodbye Girl by such and such artist." This felt oddly contextual, but again, not a paranormal smoking gun. A couple of weeks after that, I was feeling particularly sad and missing my mom that day, sitting in the living room talking to her. I said to the empty room that my wife and I were considering buying the house to stay there long term. As soon as I said that, one of the Alexa speakers in the kitchen lit up and a snippet of a song played, where a chorus of people sang, "Boy, you're welcome." I remember the album cover was blue, but it disappeared quickly and I didn't catch what it was. It seemed like it had been in direct response to what I had just said. I opened the Alexa app, and again, nothing. No recent commands and no recent history of anything having been played on any speakers. We have had the speakers for 5 or 6 years, and this never happened in any other house we use them in. Only that one. I have had this happen too. A few things with my iPhone and a few with a smart TV. My brother died in 2021, and I ended up with a lot of his stuff, including a new TV. With a smart TV, you can click on the microphone and say the name of whatever show or movie you're looking for, and it would show options. The thing is, the TV was completely off when it would say, "Sorry, I didn't hear that," or "I'm sorry, please repeat that." In addition, the color light strips attached to the back of the TV would turn on. I didn't have the remote for those anymore. This occurred only for the first month. With my iPhone, I had a few things occur. On the morning of his service, I was texting my mom about the arrangements. As we were still doing last-minute communication, with people who couldn't be bothered to read the instructions on where to go, and she was overwhelmed. I reminded her to tell people that the service for viewing was an hour later than people planned to be there. On that message to her, I saw a reaction, like a thumbs down, pop up. What is wild is that she didn't have an iPhone, and at the time her phone couldn't do those reactions across device types. We were baffled about who put a thumbs down. It wasn't from my end at all. The next time, I was messaging my husband many months later about coming home at a certain time. However, my iPhone auto-corrected to RJ is okay. My brother's name is RJ. These are just a few electronic things. We always joked about how we'd attempt anything we could to contact each other if one of us went first, and he left young. It was an accidental death. One night about a decade ago, I was heading from Phoenix to El Paso on I-10 East in an old car. It had one of those old radios that you could change the station manually with a dial. In the middle of the desert, there were no FM stations, so I hit the switch to try my luck on the AM band. There was the usual fluff, sports talk, ranting Republicans blaming Democrats, ranting Democrats blaming Republicans, ranting liberals blaming everyone, oldies, country stations, and then this station. At first I thought someone had put the old dial-up modem sound on the air, but then it was interrupted by some foreign language and random mechanical and electronic sounds, kind of like a very distorted recording of a factory floor. Then some very guttural animal sounds. They weren't random. It almost sounded like a language in the way it paused and started. Then the electronic modem sound again for about 30 seconds, then more random mechanical sounds, then some kind of severely distorted voice, again in a foreign language. I don't know what it was, but it didn't sound human. It continued this way for about 30 minutes, with distorted sounds playing all the time, until it faded away and there was nothing but static. I tried my hardest to find it again, but I never did. At 3 a.m., the only car on the road in the middle of the dark desert, I was terrified of what I had just heard. I like to think that I stumbled upon some kind of alien radio show, but most likely it was someone messing with the airwaves. I have two, both from the same house. Around 5 years ago, before I moved to my new house, I was packing up with my family, and while doing this, I found many treasures I thought were previously lost, one of which was my original Furby from childhood. I took it out and examined it and wondered why I hadn't played with it in years. Then I remembered why. How annoying it was. I quickly took the batteries out and put it in a pile of things we were planning to sell at a yard sale. The next day I got home. I was in elementary at the time, and my school was only 2 minutes away from my house. I would usually get home about 20 minutes before my parents, so I had a key. I felt like a big kid because I got to stay home alone, even if just for that short time. So I did my usual after-school routine: make a snack, then watch TV until my parents got home. After getting comfortable on the couch, I heard that Furby chattering away. I went to the pile and picked up the Furby and remembered I had taken the batteries out. I swear by the fact that this happened to this day. I never told my parents, but I threw that toy in the garbage. The second story my mom remembers, but likes to act like it didn't happen. My dad was out for the night on a business trip, so it was just me and my mom, and we stayed up and watched Gremlins because it was on TV. I don't know if any of you know Gremlins well, but it ends with this quote: "So if your air conditioner goes on the fritz, or your washing machine blows up, or your video recorder conks out, before you call the repairman, turn on all the lights, check all the closets and cupboards, and look under all the beds, 'cause you never can tell." A creepy enough quote for a young boy at night. But then, almost as if it was planned, the lights went out. My mom and I laughed there in the dark, talking about how the cable and electric guys must be working together, but then our laughter was cut short. The music box across the room starts playing. At first the full melody, a Christmas song, ending with slow, single drawn-out notes. I had not touched it recently, and my mom claimed she hadn't either. She was visibly scared and made me promise multiple times that I hadn't touched it. We just sat there in the dark until the power came back on, then went to bed. I slept in my mom's bed that night. When I was 15, I was really easily scared. especially by scary movies. My class wanted to do a group activity in the evening and watch The Ring at the cinema. I wasn't really into seeing that movie, but I wanted to come along to be social. Halfway through, I had to give up. I said I felt sick and wanted to walk outside, and one of the other girls joined me. She was freaked out, too. We waited in the lobby for the rest of the class and walked together to take the bus and subway home. When I got home, I lay down in my bed and wanted to calm my nerves with some easy TV. I turned on the TV, and all the channels were static noise. Chills went down my spine, and I felt uneasy for days. If you watched the movie, you would understand why this freaked me out in that moment. I was in my bedroom, petting my cat while he was eating like I usually do. I picked him up and rubbed his belly, and then my Google Home activated and said, "You are a good person, and I am proud to be in your life." Completely unprompted. Unfortunately, I don't save audio history for my home devices, so I can't go back and see what may have triggered it. It just lit up and spoke. My home device is not part of a group, and I was the only one home. My roommate wouldn't have my device on his phone. My mom passed a year ago, and I want to believe it was her. I have a Google Home that's been hooked up for several years, but I rarely use it anymore. I always keep the mic turned off and turn it back on when I want to ask it something or play a song through it. One night, probably about a year ago around 3 a.m., the thing started saying all kinds of creepy stuff, laughing, and then some songs started randomly playing. I was sound asleep when it happened, so it was a scary surprise. So now, not only is the mic shut off, but I also have the volume muted. I can understand devices hooked up to Wi-Fi going haywire from time to time. It's still weird when it happens, though. Years ago, I had a Sony reel-to-reel recorder that my boyfriend and I were playing piano and singing on. No Wi-Fi, just the player, the mics, and a reel-to-reel tape. When we went to listen to the playback, it had this very distorted, unsettling voice saying something about death and sacrifice on it. It creeped us both out, and that was the only time we ever touched that thing. The tape was new when we put it on that day, so I know it wasn't something recorded before. It was creepy. About a year ago, I was sleeping, and my phone was charging on the table next to my bed. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a woman screaming for help and some kind of distorted, unsettling laughter and grunting noises. She was crying and screaming, "Help! Someone please help me! No! Told me please!" It took me a minute to realize that it was coming from my cell phone. I grabbed it and unlocked it, thinking a video was playing or something, but there weren't any apps open on my phone. I tried turning all the volume settings all the way down, but it wouldn't go away. I messed around in the settings for a few minutes, trying to figure out what was going on, but nothing worked. I powered my phone off and it finally stopped. But to this day, I have no idea where that sound came from. Maybe someone was hacking into phones to mess with people. I don't know, but that was the scariest sound to wake up to in a pitch-black room in the middle of the night. Okay, here's my strange story. This happened about 5 or 6 years ago. I had a friend, let's call him Steve, who bought a cheap prepay phone, the kind where you have to buy a card for minutes. Steve used it for a few months until he could afford a better phone. The cheap prepay phone wouldn't send or receive calls or text messages unless it had minutes. Once he re-upped his minutes, he would receive the missed calls and texts. So Steve left the phone in his closet since he didn't need it anymore, but he left it on. One day it received a text message that didn't make sense. Random letters. The message didn't have any reply or delete options, and it didn't have the time or date at the bottom. After he opened it, read it, and closed it, it wouldn't save in his inbox. After a few weeks, the random words started to make sense, like why, hello, and not those shoes. But the messages still didn't. Steve thought it was weird, so he would always recharge the phone and leave it there. It was 3 of us that would always hang out at Steve's house. And one day we were just sitting around listening to music when we got a random text from the phone. "Turn it down, your mom's getting mad." Sure enough, his mom knocks on the door and tells us the music is a little too loud. We were amazed and creeped out. Then it started happening so often that we would carry the phone with us and ask it questions, and it would answer back with either one word or short sentences. Around the time we realized it would answer us, my older brother, let's call him Bob, dropped by because he was bored and wanted to hang out. We quickly told him what was happening and told him to ask it a question. He gave us a skeptical grin and asked, "Are you a jerk?" And right then and there, the phone gets a message. "Not funny, Bob." He just threw it back at us with a, "What just happened?" Look, the creepy part was that the phone had been talking to the three of us all day. And right then it already knew my brother's name, even though he had barely arrived. I started calling nonsense on the phone and going through the settings, just messing with it, and I get a message. "Put me down." I dropped the phone and said, "No." The next day we're at my other friend's house and we have the phone there. Now I hate Mayo. I really, really hate it. I had a nasty experience when I was in 3rd grade. So we start asking each other and wondering who was texting us, and we get a text. "If you want to know who I am, eat a sandwich with a lot of mayo." Right away, I knew the message was for me. Everyone started laughing and trying to make me eat one, but I just couldn't. Then after we calmed down, I get a text. "Kim is calling you," and right then my cell phone starts ringing, and it's her. I was completely thrown. I answer, and she just wanted to know what I was up to and if I was going to come over later. She was my girlfriend at the time. It would also ask and tell my friends stuff, but I mostly remember the parts that involved me. This went on for about a month until the phone stopped charging and died. My parents' house is very haunted, and they've been there over 30 years. A few times when I've called them on the house phone, it's rare I do that these days since it's easier to call people's mobile numbers. We've been having a conversation about the paranormal activity in the house, and the phone has cut out my end. I've heard strange whispering, heavy breathing, or mumbling on the other end. It lasts around 5 to 10 seconds and then goes back to normal, only ever when discussing the ghostly activity in the house. I was sitting in the car with my dad's girlfriend, and out of nowhere, my phone lights up. It says she's calling me. She's literally right next to me, not touching her phone. I show her, and she's like, "I'm not calling you." So she checks her phone. There's no outgoing call on her end. Nothing in her call log. She never called me. I answer the call, and all I hear is this loud fan-like mechanical noise on the other end, and our voices start echoing back at us. I instantly felt this intense dread and fear, so I hung up after about 19 seconds. Now here's the kicker. The call was carrier verified. You know that little checkmark iPhones show when a call is confirmed to have come from a real number? Yeah, it had that. So the carrier verified that the call came from her actual SIM, but she absolutely did not make the call. She was sitting right there. Her phone wasn't in use, and again, it's not in her call log at all. I was on LTE, not Wi-Fi, no FaceTime, no internet. ChatGPT, great source I know, said it isn't possible to spoof a number and still get a carrier checkmark, especially without her phone initiating anything. This happened to me in 2013 or 2014, back when people still had landline phones in their houses. I work in insurance, investing, and inspecting property claims, and conducting site visits in the field. I typically call people about a half hour before arriving for the appointment, just to make sure they remembered the appointment and will be home. One particular claim I had was in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, about an hour northwest of Pittsburgh. I call the homeowner's home phone number to let them know I'm on my way, and a very old-sounding woman answers the phone. We have a poor connection with a lot of static, and she keeps saying, "Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?" So I say I'm going to hang up and call back. I hang up, call back immediately, and nobody answers. I then call the cell number, get a much younger-sounding woman on the phone, who tells me she's leaving the school where she just dropped her kids off and will be there in a few minutes. I arrive at the house thinking someone else is home, and ring the doorbell about the same time the homeowner pulls up in the driveway. When the homeowner arrives, she is a young woman in her late 20s or early 30s and sounds absolutely nothing like the person who answered the phone. I comment to her that I called the house phone, but whoever answered couldn't hear me, and I said something like, "I'm sorry if I woke your mother," or whoever that was up. She looks confused and says I must have called the wrong number because nobody was home. Wanting to make sure we have the right information, I read back the number I called, and she confirms that is her home phone number. She asked me what the woman sounded like, And I told her it sounded like an old woman on the phone. She turns pale and looks scared and tells me I'm freaking her out because her family recently moved in and she swears she has felt like their house is haunted by an old woman. At this point, the homeowner is very agitated about what happened. So I try to make sense of it and ask her if she thinks we should call the police, in case someone had broken into her home and answered the phone. I walk around the home checking the doors and windows, and the house seems secure. We enter and she goes directly to her phone and answering machine. Her phone has caller ID and both calls from my number are on it. The first time I called shows the call was answered and the second call shows a missed call. So now she's really freaking out because caller ID shows that someone answered the phone. Again, I ask her if she thinks we should call the police, thinking there might actually be an intruder in the home who was nice enough to answer the phone. She declines and tells me she's been telling her husband she thinks the house is haunted and he's been making fun of her about it. She's glad that someone else experienced something, but she's terrified. Years later, I can still remember exactly what that old woman sounded like. I've tried rationalizing it, thinking the numbers got crossed, but the caller ID still showed 2 calls from me. If there's one thing these stories leave behind, it's the feeling that we're not as alone with our technology as we think we are. And sometimes the strange part isn't the glitch, it's the timing. What about you? Have you ever had a device do something that felt personal, like it was responding to you? Midnight fades, but the stories don't. See you next time on Midnight Reddit.